How's it going, everybody? It's Lampini here, coming at you again with another NFL Week 3 predictions video. We're going to get the intro down eventually. We got about 14 more weeks for it, so let's just jump right into it. Week 2 was pretty damn crazy, so we're going to be reviewing a lot of the games through these predictions. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it with Thursday Night Football, as the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing at Cleveland against the Cleveland Browns. So both of these teams had a bad week, basically. The Browns looked like they were going to run away with this win against the Jets. They were up by I think it was 13 with a minute left. But Joe Flacco channeled his inner 2012, and he drove down the field, and he managed to get a game-winning drive. They got the onside kick, and the Jets managed to squeak by with a win, which is very unfortunate because every win the Browns can get with Jacoby Brissett is a win that's well won, basically. And the fact that they're down to 1-1 isn't a deal breaker, but it would have been really great if they were 2-0. Like I said, they want the record to be as good as possible with Jacoby Brissett around. As for the Steelers, they didn't look very good against the Patriots. I think it might finally be time for Kenny Pickett. It just seems like the offense stalls so much under Mitch Trubisky. He was 20 for 33, 168 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. So those numbers aren't really going to get the job done. As for Jacoby Brissett, he had a similar day, 22 of 27 for 229 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Star of that game was Nick Chubb. He had 17 carries for 87 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this goes to show that, even with a mediocre quarterback like they had with Baker, the Browns have a lot of talent on their roster. So they were going to be just fine with Jacoby Brissett. It's just a shame that they weren't able to pull away with that win against the Jets. In this game, what do I think is going to happen? I think that if the Steelers keep Mitch Trubisky in there, I don't think that they have a good chance at beating the Browns with the defense that they have. I think the Browns are going to win this one, especially at home. Unless they bring in Kenny Pickett, I think that it's only going to be a matter of time at this point if Mitch Trubisky plays like he did in his last 2 games. He's okay, but he's a game manager, and the Steelers don't have a good enough offense to house a game manager. If you have a game manager quarterback, you need a great offensive line, you need good receivers, but more importantly, you need a great running game. And to their credit, the Steelers do have that with Najee Harris. He didn't really do a whole lot, though. He had 15 carries for 49 yards. Kind of an underwhelming season for him so far. But yeah, I see the Browns taking this one. Next up, we have a very big one. In the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. So both of these teams were incredible in their game. The Bills absolutely destroyed the Titans, and the Dolphins had an astonishing 21-point comeback in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen, 26 of 38, 317 yards for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Tua Tagovailoa had a career-defining game here. 36 of 50, 469 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. 4 of those touchdowns went to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They both got 11 receptions, respectively. Tyreek Hill with 190 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle with 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. If the Dolphins can do what they did in this game against the Ravens, then they're going to be a very dangerous team. I think this is exactly what the Dolphins wanted when they got Tyreek Hill, to complement Jalen Waddle like this. And Tua really showed something because the comeback was very gradual. The defense showed up. They stopped the Ravens when they needed to. And every time they got the ball, they just moved the ball down the field and scored. So it was very, very impressive of them. It's going to be very interesting because the Bills are clearly showing that they're the best team in the NFL right now. They have ran away with both of their first 2 wins. I wouldn't count out the Dolphins, especially at home. And in a divisional rivalry like this, you never know what's going to happen because these teams plan to play each other twice a year. So it's ripe for upsets. I am going to go with the Bills, though. I think they are the team to beat right now. And if they get a big lead against Miami like the Ravens did, they're not going to let go of that lead like the Ravens did. So I'm going to be going with the Bills on this one. So next up, we have 2 teams that are at a bit of a crossroads. We have the 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals at the 1-1 New York Jets. So let's be real, the Jets should be 0-2, but they had an incredible clutch comeback performance campaigned by Joe Flacco. They managed to get the win, so they're 1-1 right now. versus the Bengals. And the Bengals are running the risk of being seen as flukes last season because they have not looked good. When they played against the Cowboys, I was convinced that they were just going to run over the Cowboys, but Cooper Rush proved us wrong. He's a competent backup who can start in a pinch. And other guys like Tony Pollard stepped up. And this is not good for the Bengals. Their offensive line still needs work, and they were able to survive in the playoffs with that bad offensive line. This goes to show what happens when a team gets hot, because the Bengals got hot at the right time, and they won all those games in the playoffs to make it to the Super Bowl. But this is a game the Bengals need to win, or else we're in full-on panic mode. If the Bengals go 0-3, especially against a team like the Jets, then we may be looking at seeing the Bengals as a flash in the pan. One of the bigger ones, because they were like a 4-win team in 2020, made the Super Bowl in 2021, and then they're back to being mediocre again. Not even mediocre, below average. Joe Flacco did what he did best in his last game. He was 26 of 44, 307 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't know what it is about Joe Flacco. I guess he just is clutch when he needs to be. What else can I say? And when Zach Wilson comes back, he is going to get his job back, but it's going to be a shame because if Joe Flacco keeps playing well, they might just start him. I have no idea, though. In this game, I got to go with the Bengals. Like, they need to win this game. So I'm going to be going with the Bengals. If the Jets win, we're approaching panic mode for the Bengals. And speaking of panic mode, we have 2 other teams in this next matchup. We have the Las Vegas Raiders at the Tennessee Titans. These are 2 0-2 teams that we expected to be a lot better. So the Titans, I didn't expect to beat the Bills, but I expected them to put on a much better fight than they did. It was like 42-7. Derrick Henry was the only touchdown that they scored. Derrick Henry has had 2 underwhelming games so far. Both of these teams need to do something. Like, again, with the Raiders, they were ripe to beat the Cardinals, but the Cardinals came back and they took a win from the Raiders. And losses like that really take the win out of some teams' sails. So this is a must-win for both of these teams. Fortunately, one of them is going to get the win. I think this is the game where Derrick Henry is going to reestablish himself as like a force to be reckoned with. I don't think the Raiders' defense is particularly great. I think they're average. I think this is going to be a perfect time for Derrick Henry to go off and really just run roughshod on an average defense. I think the Titans are going to take it. I wonder if Malik Willis is going to start because Ryan Tannehill did not do well. He was 11 of 20, 117 yards, and 2 interceptions. If he keeps playing like that, then the Titans are going to put in Malik Willis. No doubt about it. So I'm going to be going with the Titans. If the Raiders or either of these teams drop to 0-3, it's not going to look good. All right. So next up, we got the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. So the Saints, a lot of us kind of expected the upset against the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers kind of reminded us that they're still a Super Bowl contender, regardless of, the stigma against certain teams, they were still going to win. So Jameis Winston did not do too well. He was typical Jameis Winston here. He was 25 of 40, 236 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. So that is not good. I think Jameis Winston's great start in 2021 may not be indicative of what he's actually capable of. He's a gunslinger. He will throw interceptions, and we might see another high interception season for him. As for the Panthers, it's really weird because the weeks leading up, like in the offseason, everyone was saying that they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And then, the last couple weeks, people were saying they might be a playoff team. They might have it going on, and they just don't. They lost to the Giants. They're 0-2. Baker Mayfield he's playing like Baker Mayfield. He's playing all right. But see, this is what happens when you have an average quarterback like Baker on an above-average roster like the Browns versus a below-average roster like the Panthers. He plays serviceably, but he's not going to win you any games. Christian McCaffrey had a good game, 15 carries for over 100 yards, but we still haven't seen the Christian McCaffrey that we saw in 2019. I think the Saints are going to win this game. This is another classic example of a above-average team that should beat a below-average team. So next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the New England Patriots. So the Ravens are going to want to avenge this loss that they had against the Dolphins, which is weird because they looked good. You know, they really folded after that comeback that the Dolphins had, but they looked good. Lamar was in rare MVP form. He was 21 of 29, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. So he, 9 carries for 119 yards for Lamar. So he had over 400 yards of total offense for him. That is what Lamar is capable of, you know. So, and that is what MVP Lamar is all about. But if he's very inconsistent, he can't maintain that kind of performance against a team with as good a defense as the Patriots. I don't think he's going to be able to have numbers as good as he did. But I do still think they're going to win. The Patriots are very similar to the Steelers right now, where they have a very lackluster offense, but a very good defense. And that defense is going to keep them in a lot of these games. But I think the Ravens are overall just a better team. I think they're going to be able to exploit the Patriots defense more than the Patriots offense is going to be able to exploit the Ravens defense. I think the Ravens are going to avenge that loss they had against Miami and walk away with a pretty easy one, even on the road. So next up, we have another very interesting contest. We have the Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings had 2 very different performances. Against the Packers, they looked great. They looked like a playoff team that was going to make some noise. And then against the Eagles, they absolutely folded. Kirk Cousins threw 3 interceptions. It just was not it was not a good game for the Vikings as a whole. It was an entire team failure. As for the Lions, they are the second highest scoring team in the NFL. They're tied with the Chiefs and they're below the Bills. They have scored 35 points in their last 2 games. So, are the Lions legit? You know, they beat my Commanders, but they were the better team. I feel like if you can score 35 points against the team, you deserve to win. So, it's going to be very interesting because one team is coming off of a great performance, one is coming off of a very bad performance. Jared Goff, he was 20 of 34, 256 yards, 4 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 9 receptions, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The talent on the Lions' offense is really starting to show out. And Aiden Hutchinson, he had 3 sacks in that game. Granted, the Commanders' offense was complete garbage in the first half. They couldn't get anything done. But partly that might have to do with the Lions' defense. So this third game is going to really make it or break it for the Lions to see if they're actually legit. You know, they've looked great in their first 2 games. They may have lost to the Eagles, but like I said, they still scored over 30 points. So I am going to go with the Lions on this one. I think that the Vikings beat a very unprepared Packers team in Week 1, and when they faced actual competition against the Eagles, they folded. However, that was a primetime game, and Kirk Cousins doesn't play well in primetime games. So we'll see if he plays a little bit better at the 1 o'clock spot where he's most comfortable. Who knows? But, yeah, I think the Lions are going to win this one. And if they go to 2-1, we may be looking at a team that might make some noise. The Lions may be the Bengals of this season. It's still a little early, but you never know. They've looked very, very good. All right, guys. So it's our favorite time of the day. It's Commanders time. The Washington Commanders are playing at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles have looked like they're 2-0, and they are looking pretty damn legit. They had a definitive win against the Vikings, like I said. Jalen Hurts did very well. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He was 26 of 31, 333 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. So they look very, very good. However, Carson Wentz has looked pretty good as well. He was 30 of 46, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He is tied for the league lead in passing touchdowns with 7. And, you know, Carson Wentz has been off to a very good start. Our offense has looked better than it has in a long time. I think that the Commanders knew something the rest of the league didn't when they picked up Carson Wentz. Because it seems as though we're working our offense around his strengths, because even though we came up short, Carson Wentz had some very good scoring drives in this game against the Lions. You know, he drove us down the field and delivered some pretty good scoring drives. Now, If he could have done that in the first half, we may have had a chance against the Lions. But like I said, we showed up completely flat in the first half. When we got going in the second half, it was just too late. But our offense is showing a lot more potency and a lot more effectiveness under Carson Wentz as opposed to Taylor Heineke, which, makes sense. Carson Wentz is a phenomenal talent. And a lot of our weapons, like Jahan Dotson, is really, really showing out as a rookie wide receiver. Terry McLaurin's been solid as always, and Curtis Samuel has really shown us what he's capable of when he's healthy. In this game, though, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat the Eagles. The Eagles have looked like the team to beat in the NFC East, obviously. And Jalen Hurts finally looks like what analysts have expected him to be. The Eagles are very similar to the 49ers, where they have a very, very good roster. They don't have a lot of skilled players that really blow you away, but they have a good enough roster all around where they can win games. So I think the Commanders are going to fight them pretty hard, harder than a lot of people will think, but I do think the Eagles are ultimately going to win this one. All right, guys, so this next game is probably one of the most interesting ones in Week 3. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, if you want to talk about a team that is disappointed so far, it's the Indianapolis Colts. They were shut out by the Jacksonville Jaguars 24-0. I don't know what it is about the Colts going against Jacksonville, but they basically forget how to play football when they play against the Jaguars. Embarrassing performance. Matt Ryan was 16 of 30, 195 yards and 3 interceptions. You saw me in my Week 1 pick. I thought Matt Ryan was going to be the best quarterback that the Colts have had out of the 3 that they've rotated around. And he just hasn't been. He has not looked good at all. I don't know if it has to do with the scheme. I don't know if Matt Ryan is just past it. I don't know. It's very bizarre because there were a lot of other teams that I expected to fold. Like the Cardinals, I expected to not do well. That's the first one off the top of my head, but not the Colts. I thought they were going to have a Rams-type season where their great defense, Jonathan Taylor, Matt Ryan finally game manages for them. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a play calling or a coaching thing, but they have not looked good. Conversely, the Chiefs are looking like the Chiefs of old. You remember they had a slow start last season. Not so this time. Patrick Mahomes, 24 of 35, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mahomes has 7 touchdowns and 0 interceptions so far on the season. He is MVP frontrunner right now, along with Josh Allen. If he keeps playing the way that he is, he's looking like his 2018 form right now. So I see no reason why the Colts would beat the Chiefs right now when the Chiefs are at the top of their game right now. That would bring the Colts to 0-3, and it would bring the Chiefs to 3-0. So that's the only way I can see this game going. But don't you forget, the Colts went 0-3 last season, and they rallied back, only to lose in Week 18 to the Jaguars. So I see the Colts going 0-3 in this. They need to get a hold of their season because it's pulling away from them very quickly. All right, guys, so this is probably the very first tank bowl of the season. We have the Houston Texans at the Chicago Bears. The mighty Houston Texans coming at you at 0-1-1, and the Bears coming at you at 1-1. These are two bottom-tier teams. The Bears got a very good win in Week 1 against the 49ers, but they look like the Bears we all know and love against the Packers in prime time. As for the Texans, they don't have a lot of expectations. The most popular guy on their team is Davis Mills, who's a second-year quarterback. They don't have a lot of talent on their team. However, something about the Texans that I've noticed is every now and then they'll play a very competitive game. So I think that's going to be an example here. I think that the Texans play hard very randomly. They're unnecessarily competitive in a lot of their games. So I think that they are going to win this game and go to 1-1-1, which is a pretty interesting record. So that is how I see it going. Not much to say about this game. I expect it to be pretty forgettable. I'm going to be going with the Houston Texans. So this next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the LA Chargers, is going to be pretty interesting. I feel like I've said that with a lot of my picks here, but I really think this one is because the Jaguars looked very good against the Colts. Trevor Lawrence finally showing what he's all about. 20 of 35, 235 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It seems as though whenever they play the Colts, Trevor Lawrence looks like the first overall pick he was expected to be. But more importantly than that, I think one guy that has really surprised us is Christian Kirk. 6 receptions, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Do you guys remember when Christian Kirk was given all that money by the Jaguars, and then we were thinking, what were these guys thinking giving Christian Kirk all this money? The Jaguars knew something that we didn't, because Christian Kirk has really emerged as a #1 wide receiver for the Jaguars. So that was a really, really good free agent move on their part, because Trevor Lawrence now is a go-to guy to throw the ball to. As for the Chargers, they are looking like a top-tier team as well. A very, very good offense. Mike Williams had 8 receptions, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. Justin Herbert, 33 of 48, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He showed so much heart in the game against the Chiefs, because they say he had something about bruised ribs. And just the one play that always sticks in my mind is when he was trying to convert 3rd down. He had a clear path to the 1st down, and he still threw it away. And the commentators are like, yeah, he's hurt. Like, he could have ran for that 1st down, but he's in so much pain. 4th down, he drops back and just throws a dime down the field. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, this guy is something else, Justin Herbert is. He's definitely going to play. I think they're going to, shoot him up with Toradol or whatever they do to help with these pain injuries that aren't really like, you're not going to miss a game with it. It's just if you can fight through the pain, then you're good. And I think they're just going to do something with him for that. But the Jaguars are an interesting case because they're 1-1. They're first in their division. It seems as though that the AFC South is going to be the bottom tier division this season. And they played well against the Commanders. I think that they're going to do better this season than they did last season under Doug Peterson. I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Chargers at home, though. They seem like a very top-tier team, the Chargers do. And if they're going to make a run at the playoffs, these are the kind of games that they need to win. So I'm going to be going with the Chargers on this one. All right, guys, so this next one, we have the LA Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals had some Kyler Murray magic as he orchestrated a fantastic comeback against the Raiders to get their first win of the season. It's a bit of a fluky win, though, in a similar way to the Jets. I still think the Cardinals are going to bust. Kyler Murray, it seems, can make it happen occasionally, but against a good team like the Rams, with a defense as good as the Rams, I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be able to scramble like he does with Aaron Donald chasing after him. So I think that the Rams are going to come back strong on this one. They beat the Falcons, made an example out of the Falcons, but Matt Stafford still did not play well. 27 of 36, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Stafford leads the league in interceptions right now. And that's not good. It seems as though Matt Stafford is turning into the Brett Favre of this era, where he's a huge gunslinger. He'll throw a couple interceptions. He's got a fantastic arm. But, he throws interceptions. It's just as simple as that. There are some quarterbacks in this league that you're just going to have to accept that they're going to throw interceptions. Guys like Matt Stafford, guys like Jameis Winston, stuff like that. So I don't think that the Cardinals' defense is going to be able to neutralize the Rams' high-powered offense, though. And I think that the Rams defense, especially with guys like Jalen Ramsey in the secondary, they're going to be able to hold back Kyler Murray. And especially with Aaron Donald on the defensive line, it's that dual threat I think is going to be able to neutralize Kyler Murray pretty well. And I think the Rams are going to take this one. All right, so this next game is a battle of the seniors. We have the Green Bay Packers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Packers looked like the Packers of old in prime time against their child, the Chicago Bears. Aaron Rodgers looked like his old self. He was 19 of 25, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, 15 rushes, 132 yards, and 1 touchdown. This is why I knew the Packers were going to be fine even without Devontae Adams, because even if they don't have Devontae Adams, they still have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, a fantastic two-headed running game. So you can't double cover any of these wide receivers because the Packers will just run the ball. And you can't stack the line against them either because Aaron Rodgers is under center. And they pretty much did what I expected in this game, where Rodgers spread the ball pretty evenly against a wide variety of receivers. Obviously, the Bears aren't very tough competition, and the Buccaneers are. So it's going to be another interesting test for the Packers. This is a game that when I'm watching my Commanders, I'm going to want to keep a note on because you got Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, the two best quarterbacks. You're looking at two top 10 all-time quarterbacks of all time right now playing against each other. Tom Brady did not have a very good game against the Saints. They eventually did get the job done. He was 18 of 34, 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. In these first 2 games, 45-year-old Brady he's looked like a good quarterback, but he hasn't blown us away like he did last season. And I think that's going to be indicative of this last season with Tom Brady. I think it's going to be a very average season. But, like for a 45-year-old quarterback, an average season is still incredible. But I think that it's going to be a marked step down than what he had in 2021. And it's going to be, time for Brady to finally hang it out when he has, an average season. It's going to be a slight regression, but it's still going to be better than most quarterbacks in the league because that's just how Brady rolls, I guess. So what do I think is going to happen? I think the Buccaneers are going to win this one. It's at home. I think they're a better rounded team. I don't think the Packers are a bad team. I just think the Buccaneers at home are the better team, and I think they're going to win. Simple as that. All right, guys, so another tank bowl here. We have the Atlanta Falcons at the Seattle Seahawks. We got the Bird Bowl here. The Falcons almost orchestrated a comeback against the Rams, fell short, and the Seahawks had an underwhelming performance as well. I don't even remember who they played. So, anyway, Marcus Mariota, 17 of 26, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Geno Smith, 24 of 30, 197 yards, 1 interception. So these are 2 bottom-tier quarterbacks, 2 bottom-tier teams. It's crazy to think, though, that if Seattle wins, they'll be 2-1. Somehow they will have stayed above 500. I think they're going to do a lot better than a lot of people expect just because they're used to winning. They have a lot of winning in their history, and Pete Carroll's a winning coach, so they're going to find a way to make it happen. Especially at home, the Falcons really don't have a lot going for them. So I'm going to be going with Seattle on this one. All right, guys, the Sunday night game. This one's going to be a real doozy. We got the San Francisco 49ers at the Denver Broncos. So Trey Lance out for the season. In hindsight, it was very smart of the 49ers to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on because they know exactly what they're going to get with Jimmy Garoppolo. He took them to the conference championship and the Super Bowl within 3 different seasons. I think there's nothing flashy about what he does, but he's a game manager. He gets the job done. He doesn't make mistakes, and he wins you games. It's as simple as that. And maybe they thought that Trey Lance was going to give him a bigger upside than Jimmy Garoppolo, but Jimmy G is a perfectly serviceable quarterback, and now we more so know what we're going to get with the 49ers as opposed to when they were with Trey Lance, and there was still a bit of unknown there. There's still a very well-rounded roster, and I think that they're going to be tough to beat week in and week out. As for the Broncos, they have disappointed so far. They did get the win last week, but Russell Wilson still has been a little wishy-washy. He was 14 of 31, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. This would be a great game for them to, kind of finally establish themselves because they were looking to be a playoff contender. But San Francisco is going to be a tough team to beat. The Broncos have looked very inconsistent. 49ers, one of the most consistent teams in the NFL. I'm going to be going with San Francisco on the road here. I think that they are going to defeat the Broncos. The Broncos are going to fall to 1-2. I think they're having a bit of growing pains with the new offense with Russell Wilson here. Broncos country has not ridden yet, but I think they will later in the season. I think they're going to right the ship. And now, it is time for our Monday night game brought to you by 1980s NFL. We have the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. A matchup that would have been fantastic in the 80s, but is pretty irrelevant now. The Cowboys are 1-1. The Giants are 2-0. Can you believe that? If the Giants win this game, they'll be 3-0. It's very bizarre because I think we're all under the consensus that we know they're not going anywhere, but they're still here. Unbelievable. Daniel Jones, 22 of 34, 176 yards and a touchdown. Cooper Rush, 19 of 31, 235 yards and 1 touchdown. The Cowboys might be okay with Cooper Rush until Dak Prescott comes back. They're in a similar boat to the Browns where every win they get with this backup quarterback is going to inch them closer and closer to saving their season. Cooper Rush has a lot less time than Jacoby Brissett because I think they want to bring Dak back within like 6 weeks. But if Cooper Rush's performance against the Bengals is anything to go by, I think they're going to be just fine having him. I think this is where the Giants' streak comes to an end because it's a divisional game. The Cowboys have played the Giants all the time. I think Micah Parsons is really going to make Daniel Jones' life a living hell in this game. So I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be able to handle the pressure that Micah Parsons is going to be able to give him. Micah Parsons actually leads the league in sacks right now with 4, and I think he's going to get a couple more against the Giants. So this is where their undefeated streak is going to end. Giants will still be 2-1. The Cowboys will rise to 2-1. NFC East is looking pretty darn competitive. I really hope the Commanders win because if the Commanders win and the Cowboys win, all 4 teams will be 2-1. So who would have thought it? But the NFC East is finally going to be competitive again. So, like I said, I am going to be going with the Cowboys on this one. So, that wraps up my Week 3 picks. It's really sizing up to be a very interesting week with all the comebacks, with all the injuries, with the potential of certain players being benched for other players. Some teams with chips on their shoulders needing a win, like the Titans, the Raiders, and the Colts. Teams looking to continue to establish themselves, like the Bills, like the Eagles, like the Chiefs. We're in for a very good week of football. So that concludes my predictions. I'm Lampini. Take care, guys.